And we're live. Hey everyone, my name is Neal Salas Griffin. I'm managing director of Techstars Chicago. Also involved in a number of other things like teaching at Northwestern University here, entrepreneurship in the engineering school. But I'm excited to be here today with Amos, who go ahead and introduce yourself, Amos.
Hey, what's going on, everybody? And what's up, Neal? I'm Amos Schwartzfarb. I'm the managing director of Techstars in Austin. I've been a founder or founding team member several times of several different companies, and also wrote the best-selling book, Sell More Faster. And today, Neal and I thought it would be fun to have a conversation, as the title of the talk is, building a business is greater than building a startup. So Neal and I are just going to sort of bounce and talk to each other, and hopefully y'all will find it interesting. And
Sure.
feel free to reach out to either one of us, or at least me. I won't speak for Neal. Anytime to chat further.
Same deal. And then just to clarify a few other things, I realized like Amos is really awesome, and I should mention why I even deserve to be having this conversation with this man. Like I had a few other things. I started some companies, and like I started one of the first coding boot camps. I ran for mayor of Chicago. I did a few other things, but what we're here to talk to you about today is what I've been most excited about. So our goal is to make this as conversational as possible, because Amos and I have gotten to know each other as colleagues over the past year. He's been a longtime investor. He's gone through what, 5 different accelerator programs at least,
Yeah,
maybe
I've run
6.
5 so far. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's 50 companies there, and then you've invested in other companies outside of that too. So there's so much that I've been able to learn from him in the past year, and then now he's like a 2-time author. I'm just grateful and stoked to be here, and hopefully to unpack some of his knowledge to share with all of you, and maybe every now and then something cool will come out of my mouth too.
Yeah,
That's
well,
my goal.
I'm just gonna say, y'all listening, this is gonna be a mutual love fest, because when Neal and I met, I think like I listened to Neal share his founder story, and he is being very humble about it. And I don't tweet all that often, but I felt compelled to just say I just met my favorite new person in the world, which was Neal. And I have been so thankful for his friendship and his tutelage over the past year that we've known one another.
Thank you, man. Thank you. All right. All right.
All right,
Love
cool.
Fest is
So
over. We promise. We'll get
yeah,
into it now.
yeah, we'll love each other more on our own time. So, as the title of the talk is, building a business is greater than building a startup. What does that mean to you? Maybe we just start talking about what it means to each of us.
Sure. Yeah. And I'll be honest with you. Like I actually spend less time these days, like immersing myself in splicing of language, right? So startup versus business, like what does that even mean? At the end of the day, what I mean when I say someone's in business is, are you on a path to earn more than you spend at some point? Right? Are you helping people and you're helping the world become better by solving a meaningful problem for yourself and otherwise? And are you in a position where you're able to, either sustain that or grow that? And I guess the distinction a lot of people make between startups and what they would call lifestyle businesses, I think is starting to blur more than ever. So this notion of a lifestyle business that is almost dismissive of a traditional, way of making money and sustaining oneself, I would like to challenge, because it's well known in the city that I'm from, in Chicago, that many what are seen as lifestyle businesses can become very successful, very profitable, and make millions, if not tens of millions of dollars. So I don't know what kind of lifestyle that is, but it's pretty damn good if you ask me.
Yeah, I completely agree, and I think when I think I do think about the specificity of words quite often. Probably a little too much to my detriment, but to me there is something meaningfully different potentially around those two things. And I think for me, one of the big differences building a startup, when I hear people saying that, it's the image I have in my mind is, we've got a really cool idea and we want to get it out into the world and see what happens. Building a business, in my mind, is precisely what Neal said. We have an idea, we want to get it out into the world. We believe that we will be able to provide value to someone or some group of people, and in exchange for that value, we will make money, so that one day we will make more money than we spend to create a meaningful business.
Yes.
Yeah. And I think, one of the things that I find, I've found this topic particularly interesting lately, because we meet a lot of companies at Techstars. And I think one of the things that we all scan for is what are you trying to do? Because at the end of the day, what we are investors, and we want to be investing in people that we believe can build meaningful, long-term, sustainable businesses. And so, kind of think about it that way. And especially whether or not you're applying to Techstars or going out and trying to get funding from a seed investor or an A investor, I would encourage everyone to just think about it with that mindset, which is, yes, you have a great idea. You may be able to touch every human being in the world. And at some point, you're going to need to make more money than you spend.
You know what, Amos, you triggered a thought on my end. So if it's all right, I'll jump in and add a couple dimes to this. So one thing I've noticed, and it's been bugging me a little bit because I've been murmuring it to myself at times. And I don't know how I even feel about this statement, but like sometimes it feels like some of the founders, not many, but at least some, are playing startup. Meaning like they've read the books, they've done the Google searches, they looked at the startup school, Y Combinator, whatever, and like here, that, and the other, Techstars toolkit, da 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 da. But like, where's the beef, right? Where's the substance? Where like we have to get out of our decks and our presentations and our write-ups and our documentation and focus on like, all right, am I going to get my first customer, my first 10, my first 100? Do I have a plan and clarity, and that is metrics driven? That's going to force me to face the truth as to whether I have something real or not? Or am I going to play this game where I'm convincing and persuading people that I will, maybe, likely have something at some point soon, therefore give me a chance? So it's tough because on one hand, there are plenty of businesses that need very early capital in order to make progress. But there are so many more businesses that could do with so much less if they just focused on the things that mattered the most, right? And I know you talk about this a lot, you've written about it a lot, but for me as a relatively new investor, right, past few years, I'm starting to see the other side of that in a way that I hadn't seen before. And I'm honestly trying to still figure out how to best support founders to transition from playing startup to building that business. So I guess that's how I would distinguish it too.
Yeah, gosh, my brain was like, it's going in 3 different directions right now. But I think the thing that ties the directions together and is related to what you said, I have a close friend and former co-founder, Russ Smith, who loves to say life is 3-part math and 1 part business. And his belief is that most of us get it wrong. And so if you think about that, like in terms of a startup, especially early on, there's a lot of storytelling, right? So the question that I always pose on people is, how do you use math as the basis for the story versus the story, and then you go figure out what the math might be? And it's a little bit of a chicken and the egg when you're really, really early. That's sort of, one of my thought processes. And, I'll admit something. And when I ran my first program at Techstars, I remember one of the companies coming to me, and they had an investor that was really interested in them. And they said, the investor's asking us for a 5-year financial model. And I sort of dismissed it. I'm like, that investor doesn't know what they're doing. And I will tell you, Neal and everybody, fast forward 5 years, they knew exactly what they were doing. This isn't about whether or not your math is right. This is, how do you think about the math? Yep. In fact, we expect it to be wrong. It doesn't really matter what the number says. If you say you're going to be $1 billion company in 2 years, we're going to question whether or not you're grounded in reality. But more importantly, like, how do you believe the intricacies of your business will work so that we can see the thinking behind how you might one day, if you are really fortunate and execute really well, can turn your business into something meaningful that makes more money than it spends. In other words, how do you tell your story with 3 parts math and 1 part theater?
Now, Amos, that speaks to, I think, a recent experience of mine, which in evaluating my most recent, batch of companies that I'm interested in investing in for Techstars Chicago, I had them actually submit some financial information. And in going through that and giving them feedback and coordinating like the development of a financial model with my good friend and colleague, Troy Hennekoff from Math Venture Partners, who I know is also collaborating with you on your book. He's the guy that flies around the world to teach people how to build financial modeling. Now he's doing it all through Zoom, but he's still doing a great job. But anyway, it's interesting because I struggled with my request to them to ask for 1 year, because I know how early stage they are, and I know how difficult it might be to forecast the next 2 months. So you're totally right. I settled on a year, but I clarified it to them and I said, look, I just want to understand how you think. We're not going to hold you to it. Whenever I start my meeting to evaluate their models, I say the first thing I know about this is that it's wrong. Thanks, Troy. But like it's all about having a thought process associated with that potential model. And even when you pivot, because you likely will in some way, shape, or form, and your model will significantly change and all of the assumptions within it, it's still meaningful to have gone through that exercise and have forced yourself to do it. So I had founders that struggled with accounting and finances. They come into my program. I'm like, you need to build a financial model. You need to build a financial model. They eventually do it, but some of them didn't actually do it well until they got through the whole thing and they actually needed to raise money and they actually had to face the music and actually, work with investors and to prove their worth and their value, to beyond just, internally. And in doing so, so many of them were like, Neal, why didn't you make me do this sooner? And I'm like, I tried. I tried to get you to do it sooner. So now we're here. And I think the world needs to know how powerful it can be to use metrics to drive progress with your business, even if it feels weird, icky, incomplete, inaccurate. It's okay. Just start.
Yeah, I totally agree. In fact, I'm half embarrassed to admit this and half proud to admit this. And I don't know that I may have told you this. I can't remember if I did. But so first of all, I'll get to that. But I've learned so much from Troy as well. We could make this a Troy Love Fest too. One of the things that he has said over and over, and he's come to all 5 of my programs to teach financial modeling, is when you have a great financial model, it's not about looking backwards. It's about having a crystal ball to look forwards. And the crystal ball is going to be really foggy at first, and over time, as you get better in building the model and using it to run your business, it gets more and more clarity. And partially because I have this book coming out, which includes a chapter by Troy on financial modeling. I went and decided that I was going to create a fictitious company and build a financial model from scratch. I'm not a finance guy. I'm an English major, and and I played around in theater a little bit. Right, I am not a financial guy at all, and it was really, really hard. I would say I'm 95% done. It's never really done. And I've worked maybe 50 to 60 hours, real hours, over the course of a month on it. And now this fictitious business, I'm like, oh, I get how it works, or it could work theoretically. But it is hard work, and it reminds me of when you were earlier on, when you were talking about what it takes to build a business, whether it's a bootstrap business or a lifestyle business, whatever that's supposed to mean, or building a business is not a lifestyle, or it is a lifestyle. Right. Regardless. One of the things that strikes me, and I think this goes back to like the building a business is greater than building a startup. It is hard work. And you and I know this, but the thing that I try to stress with founders all the time is you have to like literally imagine yourself digging a hole that's 100 by 100 by 100 feet with your fingertips. That is what starting a business is. And there are almost never growth hacks or hacks to do it faster. If you're doing that, it means you're probably skipping steps. That includes building a model. The model isn't about like, oh, I know how to do fancy math equations in Excel. I actually stink at Excel. I've learned a lot in the last month and a half, but I'm not very good at it. But what it does is it forces you to go dig that ditch with your fingertips, so you understand what the different layers are made of. When do you need, are you going to need, something heavier than your fingertips because there's rock? What kind of soil are you dealing with? Are there roots are there roots there? How hot is, like, all of these things? It makes you think deeply about how to go and solve the things you're trying to solve.
Yeah, Amos, let's see, it was, I think, 14 years ago when I started my first company. And a couple of my co-founders, the guys that were building the business, I was building the business with, they knew more than I did, right? They had both like started little startups beforehand. And one of them was very, very savvy financially. So he had built this really fancy looking financial model, and he showed it to me when we were building the business model. And I was so intimidated and overwhelmed, colors and formulas and all these things. And I was a education and social policy at Northwestern, right? So I wasn't, again, like you, not a finance guy. However, in that startup, I didn't touch the finances, right? I didn't touch the financial model. I was a sales guy. But my second startup, the next year, when I was running 2 barbershops on the south side of Chicago, I had to learn accounting. I had to build a financial model. I had to understand how expensive it was in my assumptions to wash towels every day. Like those line items started to click and make sense. And all of a sudden, all that accounting, BS lingo that I was bored by before became really interesting because it was going to affect how much money I got to take home every day. So I guess the advice that I'm trying to layer in here is make it real for yourself and like aim small, miss small. So like, don't overwhelm yourself by building every possible scenario and every single item that you could for your business at once. Start with the basics, the high level. What do we take in this month? What are we sending out this month? How do we make sure that we know our assumptions for what that's going to be next month? And once we build that out, everything else can kind of take form around it.
Yeah, I totally agree. And similarly, you've set my brain in a couple of different paths. One of which is specific to building any business. This stuff is hard, and there's no way that you're going to know everything. And I think I wonder, but I think Neal will agree with me on this, which is that the best way to figure out how to do things and to get help is to be really honest with yourself and others, and don't think you're going to solve everything, right? If you want to build a business, especially if you want to build a big and meaningful, long-term sustaining business, there is almost no way you're going to be able to or want to do everything. So how do you surround yourself with people, that advisors, friends, mentors, employees that are smarter than you, that can help you build the business that you see in your mind?
Yeah.
And I lost the other train of thought, so we'll come back to it.
No worries. I know we've been talking about financial models for the past few minutes, so yeah. I'm sure there's other components here that are more compelling and interesting. But I'll be honest with you, when I woke up in the morning in those early days, like it was like brushing my teeth, man, checking my financial model and like making sure I was guessing in my right assumptions. And I like playing games with myself about how accurate and how close I can get given the information I have, available to me. So it's been a real joy working with founders to do the same thing.
Yeah, it is interesting that we're both sort of gravitating towards talking about financial modeling, especially since we're not trained math guys or nope. I don't have an MBA, I barely have a college degree. So maybe there's like something innate in that, which is saying like, hey, we're having this talk, building a business is greater than building a startup, because one of the things that we've both recognized is this is like, it's imperative. It is absolute. It has to be existent in the thing you're trying to do.
Totally. I mean, everyone I've talked to who is impressive to me, right? Who I've learned a lot from. Like a good example is, my good friend Jason Fried, CEO of Basecamp. He's somebody who, he was a designer, right? He was doing web design and stuff like that, and then eventually built a product that has some, success in Chicago and beyond, which is great. But when you talk to someone like that, I was very surprised at how well he understood his numbers, because he doesn't strike me as like a numbers guy again. So there's all these people who aren't numbers people and who don't see themselves as numbers people, but they know their numbers because they matter to them, right? And then whenever it's personal, it becomes more relevant. And that's how human beings work. Like, in business, politics, or otherwise, it's always when it's personally affecting you, you have much more heightened awareness about how it works.
There's something interesting in that too. And if I remember correctly, Basecamp, Jason has never raised any capital for that business.
One exception, I think they took some Jeff Bezos money very early on.
Okay, so a little bit.
2006, yeah.
There is something to be said when it is mostly or entirely your own money, and you literally will not be around unless you figure out how to make money. Doesn't matter if you're a consumer app or B2B enterprise sales or a barbershop or a dry cleaner.
Yep.
If you can't make money, you don't exist. And there's something about, I think, to your point, like you feel the numbers, you own the numbers because they matter deeply to you. And, if someone believes in your idea and wants to just, hand you, 200 grand, 500 grand, $1 million to go and try to figure out if you have something, it's not that you, and I don't mean you, I mean the you of the people that are listening. It doesn't mean that you're irresponsible, but there's a different level of responsibility when you realize you have to make a choice between making money and eating or paying your rent. I mean, that's like an extreme example, but it's meaningful.
It's true. It's true. Because there's a couple other paths. You've sent me down now, Amos. I'm loving this conversation, by the way. I hope everyone else is. But for me, one is another thing that it does is it forces you to look at your own like personal like situation and reflect to go, okay, like maybe I need this for my life. I need a financial model for my life just to make sure that's all figured out and
I
planned.
built one of those this year too, by the way.
There you go. So like, like I hope people who, it's not everybody listening who's running a company, right? Some of you all just have other things going on in your life and you're at this conference too. So hopefully all of you can take these lessons and apply them to yourselves, because when I broke down my life assumptions and like modeled that out, I was shocked to learn all the things that I was spending money on unnecessarily and how I can manage my own personal burn rate, right? So that's a lot of fun. But the other thing I wanted to add, just back to the founder stuff, is another like wonderful outcome that I've experienced with like focusing on prioritizing metrics in the early stages of building this business or any business is understanding the different scenarios. So one challenge I like to give to certain founders with certain business models is show me the path without any outside capital. We create one if it doesn't. So when they have to go through that exercise, even if it's not they've thought through the moment when they get the no, right? When someone loses confidence in themselves because they're getting rejected after rejection to all these investors, they need to always feel like when they go home, they have a plan to survive and make money with the dream they have to build the business that they want. And that's my way of kind of backdooring them into that realization through hard metrics and numbers. Realize a path to profitability without anyone else's help, so that when you get other people's help, you can always walk away if the terms aren't fair to you.
Yeah, gosh, I think that like we got like a couple of minutes left. What an amazing thought to end on, because it is extremely relevant to the world we live in now. And, for a little frame of reference for everybody, including maybe yourself, COVID's been going on for 7 months now. The Techstars Austin demo day was 10 days before Austin went on lockdown and 2 weeks before Techstars went on lockdown. And my 6 weeks after demo day was, I'm glad we've talked about scenarios. We need to run the scenario where we're not going to raise any outside capital and maybe get any new customers for 12 to 18 months. Can we do that? And it was like, talk about a mega reinforcement of what you just described as why it's important, because you can plan for the best, but the truth is we really don't know what's going to happen in the next 3, 6. And I don't mean it from the world. I mean, even from a business perspective, like we don't know what's going to happen. And so we have to have these scenarios that is using math to drive what we believe the future will look like.
Amos, just a final comment for me then, just to bring this to a close. Exactly the same. I took Techstars Chicago remote in light of COVID on March 9th. I remember the day. It was pretty dreadful because I, took a lot of flack for jumping the gun early, but I just wanted my founders to be ready. I wanted them to start making those plans and adjustments. And we had companies that lost 90 to 100% of their revenue overnight when things shut down. So I can only imagine the people out there and what all of you all were going through when this all happened. But I saw all these founders have to really scramble and figure things out. But, I'm happy to say, even though we were 6 weeks into our 12-week program, all of our companies are standing today. They're all like in the process of raising, they're closing rounds, they're profitable, sustainable for the most part. And if they're not, they're on a path to be. And that's because of the resiliency and the grit and their hard work. And then maybe just a little bit of, 5 to 10% sprinkle on top of, folks like ourselves helping them plan properly and develop the right systems and scenarios for them to be sustainable and successful. So we hope the same to all of you. And I hope that everything that we've said so far is encouraging you to, at very least, learn about financial models, but hopefully a few other key business insights too. And I'll leave the last word to Amos here, but it's been a real pleasure to kick this conference off.
Yeah, man, I could talk to you for hours, as we do often. I think that maybe the thing that will leave everyone is, since we didn't intend to talk about financial modeling the whole time, but we did. So go and if you want to learn more, Troy Henikoff has a bunch of videos out there. Just Google his name. This turns out to be a big plug for Troy by accident.
Hey,
Google Troy Henikoff and financial modeling. You'll find tons of videos on how to.
Awesome.
Cool. Thank you, everybody. Neal,
Thank you.
Always a pleasure, man.
And, always, brother. Appreciate you.